prosecutor's driveway. Marcus Delane had spent more than 18 years deciding which cases deserved the full weight of the federal government behind them. He had prosecuted violent gang networks, taken down corrupt city contractors, dismantled a healthcare fraud ring that had bled taxpayers for a decade, and on more than one occasion, he had stood in front of a jury and calmly explained, without raising his voice, exactly why a badge did not entitle someone to break the law they were sworn to uphold. But on that mild Saturday morning in April, none of that seemed relevant. At least not yet. The 52-year-old assistant United States attorney stood in his driveway, wearing an old paint-splattered t-shirt and gym shorts, a garden hose looped over one shoulder, methodically working through the algae buildup along the base of his koi pond. A small stack of clean filter pads sat drying on a towel beside him. His wife had been asking him to clean the pond for 2 weeks. With no hearings until Tuesday, he'd finally carved out the morning to do it himself. The street was quiet. A lawnmower buzzed somewhere down the block. The kind of unremarkable Saturday people spent years working toward. Marcus liked mornings like this. Every weekday involved conflict, depositions, cross-examinations, defense attorneys trying to poke holes in 6 months of casework. Out here, elbow deep in pond water, life felt simple. He preferred it that way. A dark blue Audi sat in the driveway behind him, purchased 3 years earlier after he made partner track supervisor in the office's organized crime division. He rarely thought about the car. Mostly it just got him to the courthouse and back. He wrung out a filter pad and muttered, mostly to himself, "You're worse than opposing counsel." A private joke. Nobody around to hear it. Then he heard an engine. A patrol car rolled slowly down the street. Nothing unusual. Cruisers passed through this neighborhood on a normal rotation. Marcus barely glanced up. The car kept moving, then slowed further. It came to a stop about 25 yards away. Marcus looked up briefly. A young officer sat behind the wheel, watching him. Marcus wasn't concerned. He went back to the filter pads. The cruiser stayed parked. 30 seconds. A minute. 2 minutes. Marcus finally stood and stretched his lower back. The cruiser door opened. The officer stepped out. Tall, early 30s, athletic, sunglasses, a confident, unhurried walk. The nameplate read Officer Trent Kowalski. Marcus recognized the walk immediately. 18 years of watching officers testify had taught him to read it. The walk of a man who had already decided what he believed before he'd asked a single question. Kowalski crossed the street toward the driveway, one hand resting near his duty belt. Not aggressive exactly, but not necessary either. Marcus waited. Kowalski stopped several feet back, eyes moving from Marcus to the Audi to the house, then back to Marcus. His expression shifted, just barely. Most people would have missed it. Marcus didn't. 18 years of watching juries, witnesses, and defendants had trained him to catch exactly that flicker. Suspicion. Not built on evidence. Something older. "Morning, officer," Marcus said, keeping his tone even. Kowalski didn't return it. "You live here?" Marcus blinked. Of all the possible openings, that wasn't one he'd expected. He looked around theatrically. "Last I checked, yes." "I'm serious." "So am I." Kowalski pulled off his sunglasses, eyes narrowing. "What's your name?" Marcus set the hose down slowly. "Why do you ask?" The officer's eyes drifted to the Audi, then to the house, then back. A long pause. Marcus could almost see the assumptions forming in real time. The old t-shirt, the pond muck on his hands, the expensive car, the tidy house, and a black man standing beside all of it. "We had a report of suspicious activity in the area," Kowalski finally said. Marcus looked up and down the empty street. "Must be a slow morning for suspicious activity." "Resident reported someone circling houses. I've been standing in this exact driveway for 40 minutes. That's not what I asked." Marcus nodded slowly. There it was, the shift. This wasn't information gathering anymore. This was validating a conclusion someone had already reached. He'd seen that shift 1,000 times, usually from behind a prosecutor's table, watching a defense attorney try to dismantle a stop that never should have happened. Officer, are you suggesting I've committed a crime? I'm asking questions. Then ask specific ones. Kowalski's jaw tightened, visibly irritated. People weren't supposed to respond this way. Most citizens got nervous, apologized, over-explained. Marcus did none of that. His calm seemed to bother the officer more than any argument could have. Let's keep it simple, Kowalski said, stepping closer. Identification. Do you have reasonable suspicion I've committed a crime? Just show me the ID. Am I legally required to? Why are you making this hard? Marcus nearly smiled. The irony was almost funny. The man standing on his own property, hose in hand, had somehow become the difficult one, not the officer who couldn't articulate a single specific fact. The citizen asking questions. Across the street, a curtain shifted. Someone was watching. Then another window. Neighbors noticing. Part 2. Detained. Officer Kowalski, Marcus said, having read the nameplate. Before this goes further, I'd like to know exactly why you're detaining me. The word detaining changed the air between them. Nobody said you're being detained, Kowalski said. Then I'm free to go back to cleaning my pond. A brief hesitation. No. So I'm not free to leave. No. Then I'm being detained. The silence that followed felt heavier than it should have. Kowalski shifted his weight, irritation now plainly visible. Look, he said, I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Marcus gestured at the pond. Algae. It's been going on here for about 2 weeks. Kowalski's jaw tightened further. Across the street, a door opened. A middle-aged man stepped out with his coffee, immediately clocking the cruiser, then Marcus, then the tension between them. Let's stop playing games, Kowalski said. I'm not playing games. Identify me under what authority? Kowalski stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking. You know, most innocent people don't make this so difficult. Marcus had heard versions of that line in 100 incident reports over the years. The phrase officers reached for when the evidence was thin, a shortcut, an attempt to make asking questions sound like guilt. Most professional officers, Marcus said evenly, can explain the legal basis for what they're doing. Genuine anger flashed across Kowalski's face now, not explosive, but wounded. The dangerous kind, the kind that shows up when authority gets questioned in front of an audience. And the audience was growing. The man with the coffee had stopped pretending to check his phone. A woman 2 doors down had paused on her porch. 4 observers, then 5. Kowalski felt the pressure building, the need to look in control. Once an officer starts thinking about winning, Marcus knew, good judgment tends to disappear. Last chance, Kowalski said. Show me ID. No. The word landed flat, calm, immediate. Kowalski clearly wasn't used to hearing it, especially not from a black man standing alone in a nice neighborhood. What exactly is your problem? Kowalski snapped. My problem? Marcus gestured at the pond. I was cleaning a filter. He gestured at Kowalski. You arrived. A couple of neighbors exchanged glances. One struggled to hide a smile. Kowalski saw it, and his face reddened. Humiliation had entered the equation, and humiliation tends to produce bad decisions. If I were a white man standing in this driveway, Marcus said quietly, would we still be having this conversation? The question landed like a dropped weight. Several neighbors froze. Kowalski's eyes flickered, just briefly, something like uncertainty, before hardening into something worse. Don't do that. Do what? You know exactly what. No, Marcus said. Explain it. Kowalski looked away first. A small thing, but revealing. Part 3. The Neighbor. A silver minivan pulled into a nearby driveway. A woman in her 60s stepped out. Denise Okafor, retired from 30 years teaching at the elementary school 2 blocks over. Marcus's neighbor for the better part of a decade. She spotted Marcus, then the cruiser, then the tension. And unlike everyone else watching from behind curtains, she walked straight toward them. "Marcus?" Her voice carried across the street. "Morning, Denise." She stopped a few feet away. What is going on here? Kowalski spoke before Marcus could. "Ma'am, this is police business." "Police business," she repeated flatly. She pointed at Marcus. "I've known this man 12 years. Silence. "That's his house." More silence. "That's his car. He's lived on this street longer than half the people who've moved in since." Kowalski's posture stiffened. A reasonable officer would have paused, reassessed, verified. Instead, he did something worse. "Ma'am, I didn't ask for your opinion." The street went quiet. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. He recognized exactly what was happening. The moment an authority figure decides saving face matters more than the truth. Once someone reaches that point, the situation only gets worse before it gets better. "I'm trying to help you," Denise said, stunned. "I don't need help." Part 4. The Cuffs. Kowalski looked around the street. Everywhere he turned, someone was watching. A few phones were already up. That should have made him cautious. Instead, it made him defensive. He pointed at Marcus. "You know what? I've had enough." "Of what?" "The attitude. Not trespassing, not burglary, not a single named offense. Attitude." Even Kowalski seemed to hear how thin that sounded. "You're refusing to cooperate with a lawful investigation," he tried again. "What investigation?" Kowalski stepped forward, close enough that Marcus could smell his coffee. "Turn around." The street went silent. Denise looked horrified. "Officer, are you serious?" "Stay out of it." Marcus held Kowalski's gaze. "On what grounds?" "Obstruction." Genuine disbelief crossed Marcus's face. Not fear, absurdity. "Obstruction of what, exactly?" "You're interfering with an investigation." "I'm asking questions." "Same thing." Several neighbors had their phones raised now, recording. Kowalski noticed. So did Marcus. Neither acknowledged it. The officer was too committed, too invested in proving he was in control, and Marcus understood, with total clarity, that this had stopped being about law enforcement entirely. It was about ego. The most dangerous kind of encounter, because evidence stops mattering. Only authority matters, and Kowalski could feel his slipping. "Officer Kowalski," Marcus said quietly, "I'm advising you not to do this. Not a threat, not a warning. Advice." Kowalski heard it as defiance anyway. "You don't get to advise me." "I think you'll wish I had." The sentence hung there, strange and unplaceable. Several neighbors exchanged glances. Something about it felt like a missing puzzle piece. Only Marcus understood what he meant. Kowalski didn't, and that ignorance was about to become extremely expensive. The officer grabbed Marcus's left arm. "What are you doing?" someone shouted. "He's not resisting." Phones lifted higher. Marcus didn't pull away, didn't tense. He looked down at the hand on his arm, then back up. "Officer Kowalski." "Turn around." "Am I under arrest?" "No." "Am I free to leave?" "No." Marcus nodded once. Understood. The single word seemed to irritate Kowalski more than anything else, because it sounded like a professor taking notes, not a man being manhandled. Kowalski yanked him toward the Audi. Denise stepped forward. "Stop!" "Stay back," Kowalski barked, and she froze. Not from fear, but from the sudden, sick recognition that this was spiraling. Marcus stumbled slightly, not from resistance, from surprise. He was pressed against the car's cool paint, the whole scene reflected in the dark finish. Neighbors, phones, cruiser lights. For the first time all morning, anger surfaced in him. Quiet, internal, the kind that forms when someone knowingly abuses power. He'd spent 18 years cross-examining officers who'd done exactly this to other people. Now he was living it. "Hands behind your back." He complied, not because Kowalski had earned it, but because resisting would only make things worse. The cuffs clicked shut, one wrist, then the other. Denise pressed a hand to her mouth. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Marcus stood cuffed on his own property, silent, and that silence unsettled the crowd more than shouting would have. He turned his head toward Denise. "Please step back." "What?" "Go back to the sidewalk, please." Same tone he used addressing a courtroom, gentle, firm, immovable. She obeyed. Marcus looked toward a younger man holding up a phone. "Make sure you're recording." The street went dead silent. Even Kowalski froze. Innocent people begged for cameras to stop. Marcus was asking for more of them. Several more phones went up. Part 5. The Sergeant. The cuffs stayed on for nearly 10 minutes, long enough for neighbors to gather, long enough for clips to start circulating in group chats, long enough for Kowalski to fully commit to his version of events. Marcus sat calmly on the curb, hands cuffed behind him, posture relaxed. No shouting, no panic, just patience. The kind that comes from knowing time is on your side. A patrol SUV turned the corner. Kowalski's shoulders visibly relaxed. Backup. Validation. Sergeant Renata Cole stepped out. Mid-50s, close-cropped gray hair, the unhurried, evaluating gaze of someone who had walked into 1,000 scenes exactly like this one and learned to read them before speaking. "What's going on?" she asked. Kowalski answered fast, too fast. "Suspicious subject, refused ID, interfered with the investigation, ignored multiple lawful commands." Marcus stayed quiet. Cole's eyes moved from him, cuffed on the curb, to the tidy house, to the pawn supplies still sitting on their towel by the driveway. "Sir," she said to Marcus, "what's your side?" Kowalski cut in before Marcus could answer. "He's been argumentative from the start." Cole's eyes flicked to him, brief, but enough to make Kowalski stop talking. "Good morning, Sergeant," Marcus said calmly. "As you can see, your officer and I have had a disagreement." A couple of neighbors laughed quietly. Even Cole fought the edge of a smile. Kowalski didn't. "I was cleaning my pond," Marcus continued. "I live here. I declined to provide ID because no lawful basis was offered. Then I was handcuffed." Simple, no exaggeration. Facts are difficult to attack. Cole turned to Kowalski. "What was the original call?" A small hesitation. "Suspicious activity." "What activity?" "Caller said someone was circling residences." Cole looked around. The pond, the filter pads, the hose, the algae bucket. Everything corroborated Marcus's account. Completely. "Did you verify ownership of the property?" she asked. The street seemed to hold its breath. "No," Kowalski admitted. "Run the address?" "No." "Property records? Vehicle registration?" "No." Each answer landed weaker than the last. Marcus said nothing. He didn't need to. Kowalski was dismantling his own defense, one word at a time. Cole studied Marcus a long moment. The calm, the precision, the total absence of fear. None of it fit Kowalski's account. "Sir," she said, "what do you do for a living?" Part 6. The Reveal. Marcus glanced at Kowalski, still rigid by the cruiser, still convinced he could talk his way out of this. "I'm a federal prosecutor," Marcus said. "Assistant U.S. Attorney, Organized Crime Division." Silence. Kowalski frowned like he'd misheard. "A what?" Assistant United States Attorney. Kowalski laughed, short, nervous, reflexive rejection. There was no way. Not this man. Not the guy with pond scum on his hands. Sergeant Cole wasn't laughing. Her expression shifted. Recognition, not certainty yet. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marcus Delane." Her face drained of color. She took a step back. "You prosecuted the Ferris racketeering case." "I did." Denise's eyes widened. A few neighbors exchanged shocked glances. The name had been in the news for months during that trial. Cole turned on Kowalski. "Do you have any idea who that is?" Kowalski looked between them, fear finally surfacing. Real fear. The kind that arrives when consequences start closing in. Cole knelt beside Marcus and unlocked the cuffs. The marks on his wrists were already red. She stared at them, then turned to Kowalski. "Badge." He blinked. "What?" "Your badge. Now." He didn't move. "Do not make me repeat myself." Slowly, hands shaking, Kowalski unclipped his badge, then his radio, then his weapon. Cole accepted each item without a word. "I didn't know," Kowalski said finally. "I know," Marcus said. "Not hostile. Worse. True." "The question isn't why you treated a federal prosecutor this way," Marcus said. "The question is why you thought it was acceptable to treat anyone this way." He looked around at the gathered neighbors, the phones still recording. "You never checked who I was. You never verified ownership. You never investigated an actual crime. You made a decision the moment you saw me." Kowalski lowered his head. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The facts did the work. Part 7. What came after. A second patrol car arrived, then a third. Word had spread. Supervisors were already responding. Internal affairs would follow, then a formal review, then a civil rights complaint that Marcus filed himself through channels considerably more direct than most citizens ever had access to. The department's subsequent review surfaced 3 prior complaints against Kowalski, filed over 4 years, each describing some version of the same pattern. Stops built on nothing but a caller's vague description and an officer's own unexamined suspicion. None had previously resulted in more than a documented conversation. Kowalski was terminated within the month. The city's civil rights office, once informed of the full pattern behind Marcus's case, opened a broader review of the department's handling of suspicious activity calls across the district. A review that would, over the following year, lead to a mandatory verification protocol requiring any officer responding to such a call to check property records before escalating beyond a simple conversation. Marcus turned toward his house, the same house this should have ended in front of, an hour and a filter pad ago. He took a few steps, then stopped, and without turning back, said the one thing every person on that street would remember. "Authority gets tested when you're dealing with powerful people," he said. "Character gets revealed when you're dealing with people you assume have none." No one spoke. No one needed to. Behind him, standing alone in the middle of the street, Officer Trent Kowalski finally understood the mistake that had ended his career. It hadn't been putting handcuffs on a federal prosecutor. It had been believing, before he knew anything at all, that the man deserved them. The end.